The night was thick with fog, a shroud that cloaked the streets of Seattle in an eerie silence. It was in this misty embrace that evil found its playground, where the monster known as Ted Bundy began his reign of terror. To the world, Theodore Robert Bundy was the epitome of charm and success. A handsome law student with a winning smile and a way with words that could disarm even the most cautious of souls. But beneath that polished exterior lurked a darkness so profound, it would shock the nation and redefine the very notion of evil. Our story begins not with Bundy's first victim, but with the seeds of his malevolence, planted in a childhood that seemed unremarkable on the surface. Born to a young, unwed mother, Ted's early years were shrouded in shame and secrecy. He was raised believing his grandparents were his parents, and his mother was his sister, a lie that would fester in his psyche. As Ted grew, so did his charm and his ability to manipulate those around him. He excelled in school, became involved in local politics, and seemed destined for greatness. But behind closed doors, a storm was brewing. Ted's relationships were tinged with possessiveness and rage. His longtime girlfriend, Elizabeth Klopfer, would later recall moments of strange behavior that sent chills down her spine. Elizabeth remembered one night when Ted stood over her sleeping form, his eyes glinting in the darkness, a look of hunger on his face. It was in 1969 that the first whispers of the coming storm began to circulate. Young women started vanishing from college campuses across Washington and Oregon. At first, the disappearances seemed unconnected, just tragic cases of young lives cut short. But as the numbers grew, a pattern emerged that sent shockwaves through law enforcement. Detective Robert Keppel, a seasoned investigator with the King County Sheriff's Office, was among the first to sense the hand of a serial killer. Keppel pored over case files, his office walls plastered with photos of missing women, their eyes seeming to plead for justice. The victims shared striking similarities: young, attractive college students with long, dark hair parted in the middle. But what truly unsettled Keppel was the killer's methodology. These weren't crimes of opportunity. They were meticulously planned. The perpetrator was intelligent, careful, and worst of all, he seemed to be learning from each crime, refining his technique. As the body count rose, so did the public's fear. Women across the Pacific Northwest lived in terror, looking over their shoulders. But Ted Bundy, ever the chameleon, used this climate of fear to his advantage. He volunteered at a crisis hotline, offering support to frightened women, all while planning his next attack. It was during this time that Bundy perfected his modus operandi, a technique so cunning it would baffle investigators for years. He would approach his victims in public places, often feigning injury or disability to appeal to their compassion. Sometimes he posed as an authority figure, using fake police badges or posing as a security guard to gain their trust. Once he had lured them to his vehicle, a nondescript Volkswagen Beetle, the true horror would begin. But it was Bundy's encounter with Carol Duranch that would prove to be a turning point in the investigation. On a crisp November afternoon in 1974, Bundy approached Duranch at a Utah mall, posing as a police officer. He told her someone had attempted to break into her car and asked her to come with him to file a report. Duranch, initially wary, was persuaded by Bundy's charm and apparent authority. She got into his car, a decision she would soon regret. As they drove, Bundy's demeanor changed. His eyes, once warm and reassuring, now glinted with a predatory gleam. Suddenly, he pulled over and attempted to handcuff Duranch. In that moment, she knew she was fighting for her life. With a strength born of desperation, Duranch fought back. She managed to open the car door and tumble out onto the road. As she ran, she could hear Bundy's footsteps behind her, his breath ragged with fury and frustration. But fate was on Duranch's side that day. A passing car scared Bundy off, and she escaped, the only known survivor of his attacks. Duranch's escape and subsequent testimony would prove crucial in the investigation, providing the first clear description of the killer. But Bundy, aware that the net was closing in, made a fateful decision. He fled to Colorado, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. It was in Colorado that Bundy's mask of sanity began to slip, his crimes becoming more frenzied and less calculated. In a brutal attack at a sorority house in Florida, Bundy killed 2 women and severely injured 3 others in a single night. The savagery of these attacks shocked even hardened detectives. It was clear that Bundy was spiraling out of control. But even as his crimes escalated, Bundy's charm and intelligence continued to serve him. He managed to evade capture multiple times, even escaping from custody twice, feats that added to his growing notoriety. It was during one of these escapes that Bundy committed his final, most heinous act, the abduction and murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. This crime, more than any other, revealed the true depths of Bundy's depravity. He had crossed a line from which there was no return. As the manhunt intensified, Bundy's luck finally ran out. He was captured in Florida after a routine traffic stop revealed his stolen vehicle. What followed was one of the most sensational trials in American history. Bundy, ever the narcissist, chose to represent himself in court. The trial became a macabre spectacle, with Bundy alternating between charm and rage, often addressing the court with unsettling eloquence. Judge Edward Cowart, presiding over the case, found himself in the unprecedented position of complimenting the defendant's legal skills. "You're a bright young man," Cowart told Bundy. "You'd have made a good lawyer. But you went another way, partner." As the evidence mounted, Bundy's facade began to crumble. The charming law student was revealed as a cold-blooded killer. The jury's verdict was swift and unanimous, guilty on all counts. Bundy was sentenced to death. In the years that followed, Bundy's case became a subject of morbid fascination for the American public. He gave numerous interviews, alternating between denial and hints at the true extent of his crimes. In a final twist, Bundy began to confess to his crimes in detail, hoping to delay his execution. He spoke with Detective Keppel, providing insights into the mind of a serial killer that would shape criminal profiling for decades to come. But time had run out for Theodore Bundy. On January 24, 1989, he was executed in Florida's electric chair. His final words were a message to his mother. "I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." As the sun rose on that January morning, America awoke to a world without Ted Bundy. But his legacy of terror lived on. The Bundy case had exposed a terrifying truth: that evil could wear a handsome face, that monsters could walk among us undetected. For the families of Bundy's victims, his execution brought little closure. Too many questions remained unanswered, too many bodies unfound. Elizabeth Klopfer, the woman who had loved and lived with Bundy, was left to grapple with the horror of her unwitting complicity. She had suspected Bundy, had even reported him to police, but his charm had always managed to allay her fears. Now, she was left to wonder how she could have been so blind, so easily deceived by the man she thought she knew. Carol Duranche, Bundy's only known survivor, became an advocate for victims' rights, her testimony a powerful reminder of the importance of trusting one's instincts. For Detective Keppel, the Bundy case was both a professional triumph and a personal burden. He had helped bring one of America's most notorious killers to justice, but the experience had shown him the depths of human depravity. Keppel would go on to become one of the world's foremost experts on serial killers, his insights shaped by his encounters with Bundy. In the years following Bundy's execution, his case became the subject of countless books, documentaries, and films. Each new examination of his crimes seemed to reveal new layers of complexity, new depths to his madness. Criminologists and psychologists pored over every detail of Bundy's life, searching for clues that might explain his descent into murderous depravity. Was it his troubled childhood? His rejection by his first love? Or was Ted Bundy simply born evil? These questions continue to haunt us, a chilling reminder that the capacity for evil lurks within the human psyche, waiting to be unleashed. The legacy of Ted Bundy serves as a stark warning that evil often wears a pleasing mask, that danger can lurk behind a charming smile. It reminds us to trust our instincts, to look beyond surface appearances, and to remember that the most dangerous predators are often those we least suspect. As we reflect on the Bundy case, we are left with a troubling question. How many Ted Bundys walk among us, their dark impulses hidden behind a facade of normalcy? The answer, perhaps, is best left to the shadows. For in contemplating such darkness, we risk losing sight of the light. And so, the story of Ted Bundy ends, but its echoes continue to resonate through our culture, a cautionary tale for the ages. It serves as a reminder that evil exists, that it can wear many faces, and that vigilance is the price of safety in a world where monsters walk among men.